Hi everyone, it's Teresa from Sewn Together here, and today I am just going to go through some of the differences between traditional hand piecing and English paper piecing. So the trend of hand stitching has really come to the fore recently. Lots of us have been doing it for a long time and we know how enjoyable it is, but we're so glad that there's so many more of you who are discovering hand piecing and English paper piecing, and I just want to go through what the differences are for you. So let me just swap to the biggest screen. Actually, before I do, the one thing that I really want to stress with this is that there is no right and wrong. This is really just boils down to personal preference, and it boils down to what's the right type of stitching for the project that you're doing. So let me just swap to the big screen so you see less of me and more of what we're working on. I'm sitting at my computer desk today. So the wonderful thing about English paper piecing and hand piecing is that at no point do you need to be tied to your sewing machine. So it's a portable project and you can take it wherever you want. So let me just move some of these out of the way, and let's start with English paper piecing. So of course, English paper piecing, what is it and what supplies do we need? So English paper piecing is a method of preparing our shapes and before we stitch. Now with English paper piecing, we generally will use a pre-cut shape, or you can cut your own of course, and from a paper, a lightweight card. There's also a product called EPP, which is made from a heat-proof mylar, which is a great product as well. But traditionally these would have been cut from greeting cards, perhaps product catalogues, and they are cut in the shape and the size that you want your finished piece to be. So they don't have any seam allowances included on them. Then lay it on top of your fabric and either trace around it. Okay, either trace around it and cut out with a seam allowance, or you can eyeball your seam allowance. So if I'm English paper piecing, I like to go a little bit larger than a traditional 1/4 inch, but I will make the most out of the fabric that I've got. So this one's kind of about a 3/8 of an inch, and you can see that it's not perfectly to shape. So I have probably eyeballed this one and cut it, and you can see that its seam allowance on one side will be slightly different to the others, and that's okay. That's perfectly okay. I've still got more than my 1/4 inch seam allowance. It's then a matter of turning your seam allowances over and securing in place. So there's a few different ways that you can do this. So you can turn your seam allowances over, and you need them to be secured in place while you're stitching. So this little template stays in our fabric while you're stitching. So you've got your seam allowances turned over. Now I like to glue based, so it's a water soluble glue that I use. And there's a few different products. There's no right or wrong. With the water soluble glue, I use a sew line pen, but lots of people also choose to thread based, and it really is a matter of trying both methods and see what works for you and see what works best for the shapes that you're using. So nice geometric shapes like hexagons, rectangles, squares, kites, pentagons, those types of things, you might prefer to thread based, but of course once you get to a curve can be a little bit harder to thread based, so you may choose to go glue on those curved seams. So it's not right or wrong, it really is a personal preference. There are some people that will swear by glue basting and others that absolutely hate it, and conversely as well. So those that only thread based, and that's fine. It's your project. It's not right or wrong. It's only personal preference. So that's our prepared English paper pieces. There we go. And you'll make a whole series of those. And then those templates stay inside our fabrics while you stitch them together to make your components. So I've got a little rosette here that's been stitched together, and I've stitched it together with a little whip stitch. and those templates are still inside. So they stay in there until all of the pieces around them have been stitched, so I could then go back and remove those two if I chose to. But this is a very long-term project, so I will probably just leave them in there for the moment until I get a little bit further along with it. So you would normally, I'm left-handed, so I stitch from left to right. So what you would do is you would place your two pieces right side together and you stitch along the very edge between your template and your edge of your fabric. So you pop them together and then you'll stitch along this edge where you've got your two pieces of fabric meeting neatly. Now the advantage of English paper piecing is that your pieces are all prepared and they are exactly the right size. You don't, no guesswork involved. So they're very simple and it makes it a really portable project. And I have to admit, there's a whole lot of satisfaction in getting a whole pile of pieces pasted and prepared and ready to stitch. So it makes it very portable and easy to prepare first. And it's a very enjoyable process. So that's English paper piecing. So let me put those aside. The next other one I want to talk to you about is what we call traditional hand piecing, and it's sometimes called American piecing. I just call it traditional hand piecing because that's what I'm used to calling it. There's no right or wrong again. It is just a personal preference. So with the traditional hand piecing, there are two ways that you can go about it. You could have cut your traditional shape out of a heavier weight than English paper piecing. So trace your template out and cut it by hand out of a product like a cereal box or something like that. That's a heavier weight. That's then strong enough to be able to place onto your back of your fabric and trace around it and cut out with the seam allowance. Fortunately, we've moved on from cereal boxes a little bit, thank goodness, because they weren't always 100% accurate when we cut our own templates out. So what I use is a range of templates that I have designed, but there's a variety on the market. I'm not going to go into the details of my templates, but the general effect is that you can place your template on your fabric and you can trace around the outside edge, and then you can either use the template you've got or another product to mark a seam allowance or a stitching line, which is 1/4 inch in from that edge. So that's it there. And then you will cut out on that outside drawn line. That's a little bit hard to see, isn't it? So you'll cut out on that drawn line on this line here, and you'll have your shapes ready for stitching. So you don't have any template inside your prepared shape, but you do have your seam allowance as 1/4 inch, but you're cutting out, you can cut out with scissors or a rotary cutter so that your seam allowance does not need to be 100% perfect, but the closer the better, because you're not lining up your seam allowances, you're lining up your stitching lines, and on my templates I also have alignment points as well. So let me flip this one over so that you can see the back of this prepared section. So you can see on here, particularly this one down here, so you can see that I've got my points, my stitching line marked on, and when I'm stitching, I'm just stitching from point to point. So I don't stitch into my seam allowances at all. I should have stitched this with a contrast thread, shouldn't I? So you can see that I've stitched from my point to my point, and my seam allowances on both sides are actually left open. So you just use a little running stitch. I will have other tutorials on how to do your hand piecing, and you can subscribe below and make sure that you see all of those tutorials. So traditional hand piecing has its advantages and its disadvantages, and again it comes back to personal preference. One of the reasons that people love English paper piecing is that the satisfaction and the knowledge of pre-preparing all of your pieces and having them basted is that you know what size your project's going to be. You can visually see how big your finished pieces are going to be, and you have everything prepared just simply to whip stitch together. It's simple, it's quick, and it's great to do. The other thing with then the contrast to your traditional hand piecing is that your preparation time is a little bit less, and of course you don't have templates that you have to remove at the end. If you are stitching curves, I find English paper piecing methods, I find it quite difficult to stitch a curve with English paper piecing. There's a few different methods of stitching. You can either use a whip stitch or a ladder stitch or a flat back stitch. Flat back stitch is great for piecing curves, but I still find them a little bit difficult. So hand piecing for me, when I'm stitching a curve, is so much easier. The other reason that I love hand piecing, and I'm not trying to sway you one way or the other, it's just a matter of working out what's best for you. One of the things I love about hand piecing as opposed to English paper piecing is that with English paper piecing, your seam allowances by nature, because of your basting, are pressed open. So they're automatically pressed open. When you come to remove your templates, you can of course change your seam allowances around, but because you've basted them to the initial shape, they are automatically pressed open. So that means when you come to stitch your pieces or come to quilt your finished project, you need to think about the way that you're quilting. So if your seam allowances are pressed open, you shouldn't stitch in the ditch, because you'll just be stitching over a line of stitching. So you would need to think alternatively about how you're going to quilt your project. Now, if you're a free motion quilter, that's not going to be an issue for you. And there are so many different ways of quilting your project that are alternative to stitch in the ditch, that's not really a factor. Unless you want to stitch in the ditch, and then it's a factor that you need to think about it. With traditional hand piecing, because you're placing your fabrics right side together and you're stitching along a drawn line, your seam allowances can be pressed in any direction that you choose. So, excuse me, you can stitch in any direction that you choose, or you can press in any direction that you choose. And so when you come to your finished piece, your seam allowances can be together, which means that you can stitch in the ditch if you choose to. So if that's a factor for you, then you need to think about how you proceed. So I hope that's given you just a little bit of an idea about the differences between English paper piecing and traditional hand piecing. So of course, remember, there is no right or wrong. It is purely your preference, and try both techniques, see which you like best. And of course, you can always have at least one more of each going or on the go at the time, and have fun with your stitching. Most of all, it's just enjoying your process of your stitching. So if you are interested in learning more about traditional hand piecing, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and I'll get you started with lots of really innovative hand piecing projects. We are going to start with the basics and get some hexies done. So we'll see you soon. Bye.